Okay, so everything that you have done up to this point has ran in the shell window. So if I go and I do a print, a little hello in there, and I run this, then it's going to show in here, as you know, unless you're writing it somewhere else, like in a different kind of an IDE. And if you were going to get some kind of an input from, into your program, then it will be something like age is equal to int input, enter a number. Okay, and then of course you run the program, and then you enter the number in here. So again, the input will be coming from the little shell screen. Okay, but what if there's a large amount of data that needs to be shown, or there's a lot of data that needs to be entered into your program? Maybe you have some kind of a sensor that's collecting information, and then you have millions and millions of different data pieces that need to be entered into your program. You're not going to go and enter it manually one by one. And of course, if you want to have some kind of a huge summary of results and you want to be able to save it for later, it doesn't really make sense to output it here and then try to save this screen or something. Plus, this screen is kind of limiting. If you notice, it's just only so wide, and things kind of run slow in it, especially if you're on a Mac, it runs a lot slower, just the way it's set up. But if you were to output this to a file, it will be a lot faster than this. Okay, and also if you wanted to read all that information from a file, it's a lot faster than this. So what we're going to do today is we're going to change how things are being done, and instead of doing print, we're going to do something else, and instead of doing input, we're also going to do something else. And fortunately in Python, reading from files, writing to files is super easy, just like everything else in Python. It's simplified quite a bit. So, right, this was your normal output to shell, right? And this one was input from shell. Okay. Well, now we're going to switch it around a little bit, and what we're going to do is let's first create a file. So I'm going to say my file is equal to open some file.txt. Okay, so this is going to be the name of my file. What we're going to do with this thing is we're going to write to it. Okay, that's all I need to do. And then as soon as I do this, first of all, this thing is saved on my desktop. Right, it's in the desktop. The file is saved in there. So that means that wherever this file is saved, which is in the desktop in this particular case, that is where this file is going to be created. Okay, so I'm going to go to the desktop. Let's have a look at it real quick. All right, on the desktop, there's not a whole lot of things, and there's definitely not a some file.txt. Okay, but now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create that file just by running the program, hopefully. So I go in there and I just do F5 to run it. And sure enough, there's some file that popped up right here. Okay, what's in the file? Nothing. I didn't write anything to it just yet. Okay, now the next thing that we're going to do is let's write something to that file. So I'm just going to go my file.write, and we're going to do hello world. Okay, and then I'm going to try to run this thing again, see if it works, and it looks like it's working. Then I'm going to go into my file, try to open that thing, still nothing in it. Okay, so what I just did in my program, I created the file, right? I wrote something in it, and then it's basically like doing hello world, and then just hitting the close button and not saving the file. Okay, so if I don't save the file, whatever I wrote to it, it's not going to be shown next time I open it. So how do I save the file? I just do my file.close, and then when I run the program, and then I go and have a peek in my file, there's your hello world. Okay, so you have to close the file in order to save changes. Okay, so this is creates a file, some file txt, right? And the W is right. W indicates that we will write to the file. Write to the file. Okay? And this is what we're going to write to the file, the text that we write to the file. And this piece here saves the changes made to the file. Made to the file. Okay? So one thing here that I want to point out is that if you look well, I'm writing a text here, right? But now let me try to write something else. Well, first of all, actually, let me just grab this here, Control exit. I'm going to do another my file that write, and I'm going to put this thing on a new line, right? Hopefully. And if I run this thing, and by the way, let's just demonstrate two things at once. So if the file already exists, right, and I have a bunch of content in it, right? So I have a bunch of exclamation points in this file. I'm going to save it. All right, I'm going to save this thing, and then I'm going to close it. All right. What do you think is going to happen when I run the program? It'll save over it. So is it going to erase the contents? Is it going to get rid of these exclamation parts or add to it? Erase. Good guess. All right. So let's try it. And again, when in doubt, just run the program and have a look at it. And now the exclamation points are gone, and I'm back to the hello world. So two things that I demonstrated here. Number one is the content of if the file existed and there was something in it, by doing this, you will overwrite it. Okay, so you can actually very easily write a script that's going to destroy somebody's computer just by overwriting the contents of different files. But the other thing that I wanted to show you is that even though I have a write and then another write, both of these showed up on the same line. Okay, so how am I going to show a new line if I wanted to? \n, same way that we did with the other one. All right, if I do a \n and I run this thing now, then, oops, let me run it again. \n, and now it's on a new line. Okay, so if you want to show a new line, you have to do the \n. Okay, so shows on the same line unless I have \n above. Okay, so that's pretty much all there is, and then there's a little bit more to it. So let's say I wanted to show some kind of a variable. So I'm going to do a new line here, and let me just do an empty one. My file write, and a couple of new lines for the next thing that's coming. Okay, so let's say I want to do int, not int, just age is equal to 10, right? And this is an integer, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say my file write, and I'm going to say age equals age, right? Let's try it like this. So if I have it like this and I try to run the program, nope, doesn't like it. So this is a very similar error message to what we had when you had some kind of an input, right? Yeah, if you have an int input and you tell it please enter an age here was equal to whatever, right? 1, and you tell it please enter a new age, enter age, or let's say I want to say old age is age, and then enter new age. Right? If I run this thing, it's actually going to stop me on this line before it even gets the chance to go to the other ones. But you're going to see a similar error message, right? Right? Type error, write takes exactly 1 argument, 2 given. This one is input expected at most 1 arguments, got 3. So if you remember what arguments are, it means that it thinks that this is one piece and this is a second piece that I'm sending into the function write. Right? And then here it thinks that this is one piece, this is the second piece, this is the third piece. These are the 3 arguments that I'm sending into the input function, right? But what it is it only wants 1. Right? So if I really wanted to modify this, I can just do a +str. Right? That was one way to fix it. And the other way to fix this was if I grab this thing right? And I changed it to do a %s in here, %s, and I get rid of this piece here, and then I do the %h at the end. All right, so those are two different ways that I could do this if I wanted to with the input function, and that is exactly what I have to do for my write. Right, so instead of doing it this way, I can say write age is equal to, and then I can do plus str, right? And so basically this is, I shouldn't have changed it, but if I had it this, let's put it back to what it was. So this is what it was, and this thing gave you the error of this, right? Let me just copy the whole thing. All right, so this piece here gives me this error, which is no good, right? This is bad. So what I have to do is I have to change it to this, or if I wanted to, let me just do another plus after it, plus \n to put a new line. Or another way to do this is to say with the %s, and get rid of this whole thing here, and put the whole thing %age at the end, just like I did with my input function. Okay, so hopefully it works. Let's have a look. And didn't error out on me, and yeah, there you go. There's a file. There's a couple of ages written to it. Okay, so now one more thing is, so of course, so write must take one argument only, right? And the same issue with this here, right? That's what I fixed. Okay, now another problem that you can run into is if I wanted to do my file.write, and then I'm just going to put age, just like that. All right. So what the way I would expect this to work, if it worked, was to just put a number underneath these here, right? But is it going to do that? Nope. And what's the error message here? What do you think it means? It must be a string, right? Okay. So how am I going to turn this thing into a string? str is one way to do it. All right. So this is one way to do this, is just make everything in a string. So remember that you can only write. Let me just actually go back to the original one. So this here gave you this error message, so that you know. All right. Error message is that, and the way that I'm going to fix it is I'm going to say my file.write, and then str age, right? This is one way that it would work, hopefully. All right, no error message. Go back to my original thing, and where are you? There's the 10. Okay. And of course, there's another way to do this. If you want to, you can say my file.write. Yeah, I can do \n for a new line here, and I can say %s. And then I can say %s here, and then that also works. Oops, %s is for age. All right. Oops, no comma. F5 again. Now no errors. And when I go look at this thing, there's 2 tenths. Okay? Make sense? So you can only have one argument. You can do it in this format, you can do it in this format. You cannot write numbers, right? Same thing will work. So the same thing will happen if I try to write a float to the file. It'll tell me the type error must be str, not a float, right? So that's why I have to cast the variable into a string so that I can write it to a file, or I can do this way, which also casts the variable into a string. Okay? So opening a file creates a new file. If the file doesn't exist, W indicates we're going to write. We're going to overwrite the old contents, right? W overwrites the old contents of the file. Okay, if you wanted to add to it, then what you can do is you can just say A, All right, so if you wanted to append to the file, this appends. Okay, so if I was to go and change this thing here to A, now the next time I run the program, you're going to see this whole thing being added all over again to the program, hopefully. Run it. All right, so I'll go look at that file, and there you go. That's how you append to a file. Okay, so I'm not going to ask you to append to files, but just so you know, there it is. It's the append. All right, so this is basically making a file, writing to a file, saving the file, and that's all there is as far as files are concerned, writing to files. Any questions? All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another, well, this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to start reading from the file. So this is output to a file. All right. And now what we're going to do is we're going to have input from a file. And it works pretty much similarly to what you saw here. I'm just going to start with some other, I'm going to call it a file. And by the way, I could, since I have already closed the file, I could reuse my variable my file if I wanted to. I can say my file equals open, and then I can open that file, some file.txt. All right, and this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it to read. All right, this is the read. Okay, and but let me just change the variable. I'll call it a file. Okay, so this is a file. So the first thing that I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to tell it to open a file that doesn't exist, right? So you can see in there's no some file 2, right? But I'm going to add a little 2 in this file name and try to open this thing, right? So if I try to open a file that doesn't exist, oops, all right? This is what happens when you try to open a file that doesn't exist. So unlike this one here, this one you can create a file that doesn't exist, or you can overwrite a file that exists, right? So you got to be careful with that. In this one here, you get an error, right? So trying to open a file that doesn't exist, you get this error message. Okay, so that was this one here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this and I'm going to open the file that does exist, right? So let's see what it does. Is it going to take it? Yeah. All right. So I have opened the file, but I haven't read anything from it yet. So I'm going to go a file that read, just like that. And then I'm going to, basically what this does is it reads, so reads the entire file as a string. Okay, so I'm going to go in there, I'm going to say file as string equals this. Alright, and then I'm going to go in there, I'm going to say print file as string equals file as string, and run this thing, and there you go. We read the whole file, right? We put it into the variable file as string, and then I'm showing you the whole file as a string, including all of its new lines. Okay? Alright. So, there's different ways to read a file, by the way, because if you have a file and it has a whole bunch of lines of text in it, a lot of times it's actually better for you to get the elements from each line of that file. Alright, or get each line into basically a list. Alright, so that's, and by the way, there's only one way you can, you're either going to read a file, once you open a file, you can read it one time before you close it. Alright, so I can't read the file and then tell it read it again. I have to close it and read it again if I wanted to. So that's why I'm commenting these two lines. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say this time is going to be file as list of lines. All right, picking a long variable name to illustrate a file that reads, and then it's split lines. I think it's split lines. Okay, and I'll show you print and this equals this, and have a look. And notice what it does now is it gets the file, this was my original file, right? I mean, the contents of my file. And then what it does is, actually this is the contents of the file, right? So what it does is it grabs this first piece. In fact, why don't we just look at the actual file? This is my file, right? Okay, so this first line, the hello, is the first element on my list. And the second line is my second element of the list. My third line, which is just a space, nothing in it, is this one. Okay, then the next one, this here, is the next one, etc., etc., etc. So every new line, this last line right here, it's got a little space in it. We got the little space as part of that last element of the list of files list of lines. Okay, make sense? Questions? Okay, all right. So some other things. So let's say this time what I'm going to do is, let's say I'm going to create some file. So I'm going to go in there in my little file that I had, and I'm just going to change some things. I'm going to have like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And then on the next line I'm going to have a 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay? So now the next thing that I want to do is, well, let's save this. I'm going to save this as file. Let me do this. Close this the way it was, and I'm going to make a new copy some file txt. Oh, can we duplicate it? Duplicate. There you go. So this thing here is this. Oh, damn it. All right, one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There you go. Okay, I'm going to save this. Save. Close it. And let me rename it to numbers txt. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the numbers txt file. And so this is numbers txt. That's what it's going to read. Oh, and by the way, I kept forgetting to close this. So it's not that important for you to close the file once you read it. But you know, it is in a way, because the file will be opened by your program. And if you want to do something to that file, maybe you're not going to be able to because it's, you know, being used by your program. So close your files that you're reading, even though you won't really tell a difference much usually. So closing the file from reading after you read it. So let's have a look at what it will do with these numbers. So it just grabs the lines and gets the first line, puts all these numbers as one element, then it grabs all these other ones, puts them as another element. Okay? So now, and you're gonna have plenty of assignments that will ask you to read a file that has a bunch of numbers that are kind of formatted in this manner. In fact, today is a good time to show you what your final project looks like. In fact, why don't I just do that right now? So here's your data mining project. All right, so you have an idea of what that is, and it's a big chunk of points compared to your usual stuff. So what this assignment asks, and by the way, there's like some easier ones. Let me just warm you up with the easier ones. So this is next week, right? So what you're gonna do this week is, just read and write to a file, find a median, some simple things. The one that's kind of formatted similar to what I'm showing you today is there's this text file called sunspots.txt, right? And the sunspots.txt looks like this. Okay, so make sure you download that file, right? And then use this file. Do not go in there and copy paste all this text. That kind of things don't work too well. All right, so anyway, you can see there's like a bunch of data in there. You're gonna have to read through this data. You're gonna have to, for this particular assignment, this is like a bunch of data for sunspot activities. for each year, separated by months. And what the program is going to ask you to do is calculate the average for each of these, so that you can give me the average for each of the years, basically, each line. Okay, so why don't I just grab one of these lines too. I'm going to get this one, I'm going to copy it, I'm going to throw it, and numbers. I'm going to put it all the way at the bottom. Alright, there. Okay, so that one's going to be there too. So I'm going to close it. So this is basically, I'm going to show you how to calculate the average of one of these lines, pretty much. Okay, so going back to the idle, and then I'm going to jump back to the data mining project. If I run this again, oops, right? It's the same deal, right? This is my first line, there's a bunch of numbers, second line is a bunch of numbers, and then my third line is this piece here, right? Okay, and this is where, this is where it gets fun. Python is very user-friendly with strings. It allows you to just, remember, split things easily. So what I'm going to do is, let's say I want to find the sum of this line, right? So the sum of the first line of numbers. All right, so I'm going to go in there, sum of first line. All right, I'm going to make it equal to 0 initially. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, before I even do that, I want to get into this first line, and I'm going to get all these numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I have to split that into its own list. All right, so I'm going to grab this, which is a string. All right, so let's say line 1 is equal to file as list of lines 0. Right, and I can show you that. Print line 1 equals line 1, run that thing, and here's my line 1, right? So I took out one of these lines, and then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to call this line 1 as a list, and that's going to be just equal to line 1 dot split. All right, and then I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to go in there, I'm going to say print line 1 as a list equals, and let me copy it and show you what that looks like. And by the way, what I'm doing is what you should be doing when you're working on these data mining projects. Don't assume that it's doing something. Don't expect it to be doing something. Just show it to yourself. So show yourself every piece of code that you're working with. So, okay, first I read the thing into by lines. I showed myself the list so that I can visually see what I'm working with. Then I said, all right, I'm going to grab that first line. I extracted it out of there and put it in a variable. Okay, is it looking what I expected that it will look like? Yeah, this. Next line is I'm going to split this line here into its own list, and I did. And then the next thing is I'm going to find the sum of this line, right? So let's say I'm here. I'm going to say so now find the sum of first line is equal to 0. I'm going to say for I in range from 0 to the length of my line as a list, right? And then 1, steps of 1. And then the first thing I want to do is I just want to show myself these things. Am I really working with what I thought I would? Print, and I'm just going to show them one by one. Print this I. Okay, and then run my program. And did I get all the numbers from this list? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got them. Okay, so now the next step is I want to add them to my sum, right? So I show them, great. They look like I thought they would look. And then I'm going to say sum of first line is equal to, or let's just do plus equals this, right? So all these numbers that I showed you. So I run this thing now, and oops. What's wrong with this picture? Unsupported operand type for plus equals int and str. What do you think is the problem? can't add an integer and a string, right? Which one's the integer? Which one's my string? Is this an integer? Right? So that pretty much tells you that the other thing's got to be the string. So it's telling you, okay, you can't do that. You cannot do plus equals with an integer and the string. And we know that we defined this thing as an integer from the beginning. So this must be the integer, and this must be the string. And it is actually the string, because if you look at this list right here, notice how each of these numbers is actually in quotes. Right? So that tells you that when I read, and by the way, this was one big list, this was one big string, right? So I got my list, my line as a string, and then I went and I split that string by spaces, getting a list of little strings. So the moral of the story is, whatever you read from a file, it will be a string. Okay, so if you're trying to do this kind of a math with it, it's not going to work. But you can make it work very easily, right? What do you have to do for this one, you think? Cast it, just make an int, right? And if we're working with an integers, you might want to make it an int. If you're working with floats, make it floats, right? Well, let's go with ints, because I know these are all integers, right? And then I'm going to show you the sum, okay? Print this equals this. All right, there you go. We added them all up. And if you don't trust it, pull out the calculator and add up all these numbers. Okay? So that is a couple of important things. You know, reading the file, splitting it into lines, reading a line itself, turning it into a list of things, and then realizing that the list of those things is going to be always strings, so you have to convert them to integers or floats depending on what you're working with. Okay, so let's do the other line. So we had, that's why I went in there and I, created another line with a 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, but this time it's separated by commas. Okay, so let's do all the stuff that I did from before. This is going to be a line 2 is equal to file as, well, let me just copy that whole thing. Alright, and this time line 2 is 1, right? This time we're going to do line 2 as a list, okay, is equal to line 2 dot, and what am I splitting the second line by? Remember the split, when I did split here, splits by any number of spaces, right? Now the second line has not spaces, it has commas. So what I have to do for my split is I'm just going to do a split, and I'm splitting by commas. Okay? And this is what you're going to have to do for your data mining project, because it's a comma separated file where every little data piece is separated by commas from the other ones. Okay? So then, now that I'm going to get this thing, let's have a look if I got what I want. Print this equals that, and let's, again, whenever you do a couple of lines of code, test it, see if you're getting what you wanted. Okay, so line 2 is a list. So this was my line 2, right? First when I read it and I put it into a list of lines, this is it. Then I went and I split it by comma to get another list, and notice that it is again a list of strings. Maybe I should have made them floats. Let me go in there and change that real quick. So numbers. Let's have a 7.7, 8.8, 9.9, 10.10, 11.1, whatever. 10.1, whatever. 11.11. Okay, save it, close it, run this thing again. Okay, cool. It still got me the numbers, they're still text. Okay, so now I'm going to make a sum of second line, sum of second line is equal to 0 initially. I make one of those loops for I in range from 0 to the length of line 2 as a list. Alright, steps of 1, and then I'm going to do sum this one plus equals, and let me try to turn them into an integer, see if it's happy. Int line2 as a list, square brackets I, just like I did before. Alright, let's see if it's happy with this piece. No. Invalid literal for int with base 10 7.7, right? Keyword here is int and 7.7, right? So you're attempting to read this thing as an integer, but it's actually a float, right? So it doesn't know how to do that. So what are we gonna do? Well, let's do it. So this piece right here, right, gave me this error. So let me just throw it in there, so we know. And now I'm just gonna copy this whole thing and just fix it by changing the int to float. And then hopefully if it works, I'll show you the result. This, oops. And hopefully we get some kind of a number. And yeah, there you go. So that's the sum of that line. Okay? And so far I've been summing everything, right? Every little piece of data. But now let's go to the next one. I have a 194, 194, and then let me just do a couple of lines actually. So I'm going to go in there. Where was that other one? Right here. So I'm going to download this real quick. Let me get, there you go. Three more lines, and throw them in my numbers file. There you go, right? Okay. So then the next thing that I want to do is, now I want to calculate the average of these lines, but I want to look at only these numbers, right? So I'm not going to be including the year. Okay? So what I want to do is I want to do lines. So this is my line 1, 2. So I want to do 3, 4, 5, 6. All right? 3, 4, 5, 6. And all right, lines 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? But sum of, I want the sum of the data only, excluding the year. Okay? So, and if I have a whole bunch of lines, you can see that I'm not going to go and copy paste this thing a bunch of times. So this is why I need to be able to come up with some kind of a way to go through all the lines. Okay? So first of all, let me just run the program, see what I get before I even get going. Right? Because I already have a lot of these pieces set up to show me. And it might be a little bit hard to read, so you might want to move them around a little bit. It's still not going to be very good, but whatever, who cares? So this is my first line, right? And then this is my second line, or my third, or whatever, third, fourth, fifth line, right? Each line is in the list, okay? So I got all the lines in there. It's hard to read them, but whatever, don't worry. So now what I'm going to do is, I want to show lines 3, 4, 5, 6. So let's start with showing the lines first. So show lines 3, 4, 5, 6. So for I in range from 0 to the length of my, what do I call it? Line 1, no, file as list of lines. All right, if I just do this, I should get all the lines. So let's see, print this I. Right? So show every line. Run it. And these are my lines. Okay, so now it's a little bit easier to read, but whatever, we don't really care that much, right? So this is my first line, my second line, my third line, fourth line, fifth line, sixth line. Okay. So we had already looked at this. How do I make it show me only these lines? That will be the first step. How do I change my loop? So I'm going to make my loop, instead of starting at 0, why don't I start at 0, 1, 2, maybe try at 2. All right. And yeah, there you go. Okay, I got the lines. Maybe I can put a little label in there. So print show lines 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so it's easier to see it. And yeah, there you go. These are my 3, 4, 5, 6 lines. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to show the sum. Want to sum. I'll throw it inside somewhere. Well, there. Now what I want to do is I want to find the sum of each of these lines. Okay, so before I had my sum inside here, right? And let's see if that works. So first of all, I'm going to have to break each of these lines by pieces, right? So what I'm going to do is break each line into a separate list, right? So I'm just going to make up some variable here. A line is equal to this thing. And that's why you want to show the stuff to yourself to see what you're working with. So this was a list. What am I going to splitting this list by? Any commas in there? No, so it's got to be by spaces most likely, right? And notice that since there's a bunch of spaces in here and there's maybe like 1 or 2 in there, so I'm just going to say dot split like that. And then let me show myself the lines. So instead of showing every line here, I guess show the line. Yeah, I'll show it twice. So print a line equals let's call it a line as list, right? A line as list equals that. So now hopefully I get a list for each of these lines. It starts to look messier, so maybe why don't I just take off this piece here. That was just to show myself every line. And now this is every line as a list. Okay, so there you go. First line, or whatever number line, then the next one, then the next one, then the next one. Okay, so I can see them visually that this is what I'm going to be working with. Now what I want to do is I want to add up these numbers only. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to make another loop that goes through each of these individual lines. All right, so a loop that goes through the elements in each line as a list, or list each of line as a list. Okay, so I go and I do another loop for I in range, and let's make it go from 0 to I don't know, the length of a line as list, and I want it to do steps of 1. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another print in there. It might look a little messier now, but whatever, we'll deal with it. And I'll just show them like this. So just this. Alright, and it'll take a little longer this time to go through all this crap, but you'll see it. Alright, there you go. So visually, what am I doing? I'm going, this loop here that I have, right, goes through each of these lines, list of lines, list of elements, a line as a list, whatever you want to call it, and it shows me every one of them, right? But I don't want to include the year. So, okay, now that I see that it includes the year, I'm just going to go and tweak my loop a little bit, right? Just instead of starting at 0, start at 1. And now the year should be excluded from these things that are being shown. And run it to see it, and okay, yeah, it's working the way I wanted it. Okay, so now the year is not being shown. Okay, so at this point now, I'm going to make a sum of data in each line, long variable name or whatever. Okay, I'm going to copy paste it. All right, so instead of showing these things that I did, I am going to plus equals and a line list and I. Okay, and then if I wanted to, at the end of each of these, I can say print the sum for year And what's the year one? The year one was the first one. So if I just get a line as a list, and I put the 0, right? This will be my year, right? And then I say is, and then I put, I'll make it equal. Yeah, is, and this in there. Okay, so hopefully that shows it to me. Whoops. So same business again. Oh, int in a string. So what do I have to do? Cast it. Let's try a float. I don't know why it's saying an int. Try it again. Alright. Yeah, so this is your first year. The sum for the first year is 387. Alright, the sum of year 948 is 1999. It's kind of a big number, but whatever. Okay? So that's how you do it. Is it really that big of a number? 1,000? 50, 90? Yeah, that makes sense. They're just bigger numbers. Okay? So that is pretty much the kind of things that you're going to have to do for this week for the Sunspots project. So let's have a look at this real quick, because that's pretty much all I wanted to tell you. So this is all this stuff is in this link here for files. I have an example where I have a file and I use a loop to write a bunch of numbers to it. Right? Notice how I'm casting every number to be a string, because you can only write strings. And I'm putting a new line at the end of each of these, and then I'm closing the file, and then how to read a file, okay, and how to read the file and split it into lines. So going back to splitting strings. Yeah, I showed you how to split strings. So this is relevant because you need to split each of these lines usually by spaces or commas or something. Okay, so first one, file write and read, is using what you've learned. What you have to do is you have to create a file, write a program to the following. User enters a file name. So the user is going to give you the file name. So let's see how we're going to do that real quick. So create a file. All right, create a file based on user input. All right, so you can do something like file name is equal to input, enter a file name, and then in here you're going to say new file, or whatever name you want, is equal to open file name, and you're going to create a to write. Right? So this makes a file of users, whatever makes a file named after the user input, right? So whatever the user enters, that's going to be the name of my file, and then I can just write a bunch of stuff to it. Okay, so that's the first piece for for 46. So let me just put a little. This is your hint. P46 hint. All right. So that's the first thing. Then user enters the titles of 4 of their favorite movies in a loop. All right. So just like, let's say we want to, we're going to go in there, we're going to say 4 movies. Yeah, so we're going to make a loop for I in range from 0 to 4, steps of 1. I tell them movie is equal to input, enter a movie title. All right. And then what you're going to do is you're going to write each of these to your file. Then you just go new file that write, and you're going to write the movie, which is already a string, movie plus a new line at the end of each of these. Okay? I'm pretty much giving you the answer, so try not to look at this too much. Program writes 4 titles to a file, 1 per line, then closes the file, uses a loop. Then program reads the 4 titles from the movie, stores them in the list, and shows the list. The program writes the titles in reverse order into a file reverse order txt. Okay? So if I wanted to, right, if I'm going to write all my files here, right, then I can read them. So when this whole thing is done, you close it, new file, close the file, then you're going to open the file, right? So you can call it again, new file is equal to open file name, whatever the file name the user wanted. This time we're going to open it to read. Okay, and then we can make a list out of it. So file as list, or list of lines is equal to new file read split. All right, so that gives me the list of lines. If I wanted to if I wanted to create another file, right? So at this point I can close this, new file, close, right? So this one was from this one is for this one. So I read the file, split it into lines, close the thing. Then I can make a new file. New file is equal to open, let's call it, what do I call it here? Reverse order. Reverse order txt, right? And this time I'm going to create a file to write to. And in order for me to write this list in reverse, all I got to do is I have to say, all right, well, for I in range from the length of, well, I already know it's 4, so I can start at 3, but let's do this. So I know it's 4 things, so I'm going to start at 3, which is the index of the last one, right? So if there's 3 lines, if there are 4 lines, right, then you have maybe something like file, copy this thing, right, is equal to Alright, so let's say on the first line you have 1, on the second line you have 2, on the third line you have 3, on the fourth line you have 4. So this is the contents, right? Each of these is per line. The index of these is, remember, 0, 1, 2, 3. So if I wanted to show this one first, then I'm going to start at the 3. And I want this thing to go to 0. If I put 0, then it's going to go to 1. So I want to go to -1, right, in order to reach the 0. And then I'm going to tell it to go backwards, which is a -1. And then I'm going to write these things now in reverse. So if I wanted, I just want to double check, right? I would run the program to actually see each of these. So first I would want to make sure that print I is equal to what I want, right? So the expected I here should be I is equal to 3, 2, 1, 0, right? I run this thing to verify that I'm really getting these, and if it works, then I plug in this value in here. So I'm just going to say not in there. So new file, write. This is my first line of the new file, and that one's going to contain my file as list of lines I. And that's basically it. That's the whole thing. Okay? So try to write on your own. If you get stuck, look at this thing. And if you find yourself looking at this thing and you utilize it to solve the problem, then once you've done it, close it, write it all over again, but without looking at even your own solution. Okay? The things that you are not really required to remember are things like, how do I do this? How do I open a file to write? How do I, so the actual syntax of the language, as long as you know where to reference the basics, I don't think it's important for you to remember them, but knowing how to use them in order to compose these solutions is the important part for me. Okay? So that's that one. That's your hint for 46. 47, write a program which writes a random number, 50 to 55 of numbers in a file. Opens the file, reads the numbers into a list, sorts the list and shows it, and you have to use the bubble sort that you have already done, right? So you're not allowed to use sorted sum, must write your own code. So we already done bubble sort in one of the weeks with the lists. So look at those and we can write that. Calculates the median, and you cannot use any Python built-in function to find the median for you. So you're gonna have to sum it up and do the math manually yourself, or the program will do the math for you based on what you wrote. So to first of all, what is a median? Median means not the average, but the middle value. Okay, so what does that mean? So if you have a list of numbers, let's say this is your list of numbers, this here happens to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 numbers, right? So it's the length of the list is odd. Okay, if we have odd number of numbers, then the median is just you go with the value right in the middle. So this one is in the middle, there's 3 to the right of it, there's 3 to the left of it, and then this is the median. Now if we have an even number of numbers, then the median is the average of the two values in the middle, right? Notice there's 2 values in the middle, there's 2 in the left, 2 to the right, and what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 plus 6 divided by 2, and that's the average of these two values, and that is your actually median for that. Okay? So you have to, first of all, this list of numbers here has to be sorted first, right? So you cannot talk about a middle value unless the thing is sorted first, which is why you have to sort it. Okay, this list of values here is going to be between 50 to 55 numbers long. So you don't know if it's even or odd. This piece itself is going to be a random piece. Okay, and then each of the numbers itself is also going to be a random number. So each of the actual numbers in here, each of them is between 0 to 100, and however many numbers we have in here are anywhere between 50 to 55. Okay, so since I know that people have questions on this, usually I'll show you a hint on this thing too. Okay, and then new file, close, and let's see if it does anything with this. I don't know, movies, txt. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now if it's all set, if it's all done its magic, I have my movies file. There it is. Let me close this other one, and I have my reverse order 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, what did I forget to do? Well, I forgot to put them on a new line. So whenever I write this, I do a plus and a new line, and that'll do the magic. Okay, but since I don't want to be entering things anymore, I'm just going to comment this whole thing out. Alright, so now that we're done with this, let's have a look at the next one. So I'm going to make a total numbers. And by the way, I have to import random inf. Let's do from random import randint, right? That way I can just use randint is equal to randint. And this thing is going to be a number between 50 to 55. Okay? And then once I have this thing going, then I can say our new file is equal to random numbers. New file is equal to open. This is going to be the name of my file, random numbers txt, and I'm going to write to this file. Okay, and I'm going to make a loop for I in range from 0 to total numbers, which is however numbers I want to write, right? I'm going to be writing anywhere between 50 to 55 numbers. And then I'm going to do a new file, write, and then since I cannot just do randint from 0 to 100, right? Each of these numbers has to be between 0 and 100. I cannot write a number, right? So I'm going to have to cast this thing to a string. And I don't know if I need to put it on a new line, each of them in a new line or something. Is it in a file? So it doesn't say how you're supposed to write these. Why don't I put them on each of them in a new line, right? So I'm going to go in there and I do plus \n. So each of these is going to be on a new line. Just to make it easier, I can have them separated by commas if I wanted to, but whatever, let's leave it like this. So now I'm going to have a file called random numbers, which is going to have 50 to 55 numbers, each of them on a new line, right? And I can say new file dot close, and I don't want to be looking at the file and switching back and forward, so why don't I do this? I'm going to say new file now, open is equal to open. I'm going to open up this thing here again that I wrote. This time I'm going to open it to read, And what I'm going to do is I'm going to split it by lines. File as line list is equal to new file that read that split, whoops, not split, lines, right? And then, because I don't want to look at it, I'm just going to say, all right, hold on. Well, yeah, actually, why don't I look at it? So I'll save this, and I'll say print len of file as line list, right? That shows me how many things I have in it. And why don't I run it? Hope for the best. 50. So I wrote 50 numbers in that thing. So let's say I can go in there and what did I say? That was the random numbers. These are my random numbers. So 50 of them from 0 to 100. Okay? So then what you have to do is you have to now get this thing, which we have as a list, right? File as a line list, right? So what I have to do is, why don't I change things a little bit? I'm going to cheat, right? So I know I'm supposed to make 50 to 55 numbers, and I know each of them is supposed to be from 0 to 100, but it actually will make my life easier if I just did this. Okay, so instead of making 50 to 55 numbers, let me make 5. Okay, and instead of these being from 0 to 100, well, whatever, they can be between 0 to 100. I'll leave that. But just to, simplify my work with this, larger problem, I'll simplify it, I'll solve it with simpler versions first, and then I'll, make it go back into a normal one. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to do just do print file as a list so we can see what it looks like. All right, and there. So let's have a look at it. So these are my 5 numbers, right? Okay, but they're not sorted. So now the next thing that I'm going to do is I got to sort this thing. Okay, so let's do our bubble sort. And the bubble sort, we have to be sensitive to the fact that these are all strings. So let's do the bubble sort. Bubble sort. So I go, all right, for I in range from 0 to the length of this thing minus 1. If you remember y minus 1. If you don't remember y, just go look at the week where I covered bubble sort. Then it's going to be a j in there. Okay. And then what we have to do is we have to do the swapping. So if my value on the left, if my if this one I is, if the left is bigger than the right, I plus 1, then I'm going to swap them. I'm going to say temp is equal to this, then this is equal to that, and then that one, is equal to this one. Not that. Is equal to temp. Okay? But now the only problem with this whole thing is that you cannot really accurately compare strings to each other. So if you're trying to compare this thing here, what it will do is it will look at the first digit only. And it will try to kind of sort it only by the first digit, and it's not going to be accurate really. It will not be sorted correctly. So anyway, after my bubble sort is done, actually before I do this, I got to do, these are all integers, right? So I'm going to say, okay, if integer this is bigger than this integer, then just swap their values. And in swapping their values, you don't have to cast anything. You just swap things around the list. Okay, so I'm going to look at this, my file as line list. I'm going to look at this thing here. And is it sorted? No, it isn't. Got it? If the left is bigger than the right, temp is equal to the left is equal to the right is equal to the left, why don't you sort it? Oh, because this here is supposed to be j. So the j is the inner one. Let me switch these. This is going to be j here, and this is going to be my I. Right? So what happens when you get lazy? So the I works with the inner loop, right? The I needs to be for the variable that's used in the inner loop. So I'm going to run it again. And as you can see, even though if you've done this a million times, you can run into unexpected results. So show yourself all the time what you're working with. Test your program every couple lines. Okay, so there you go. Now it's sorted. Okay, maybe I don't know, still don't trust it. Let me run it again. Right? Is it sorted now? Yeah. Okay. Cool. So now all I got to do is, since I simplify this thing, I'm only working with 5 numbers. I know it's got to be the one in the middle. Right? So let's just find the one in the middle. All right, so let's find the index of the median. All right, so what's the index of the median here? Well, for 5 numbers, it's going to be 0, 1, 2, right? So I have to kind of automate this thing. So I'm going to say, all right, so median index is equal to my file, the length of this thing, divided by 2. Let's see what that gives me. Yeah, I might be off, but I'll visually see by how much I'm off right now. Okay, so I look at this, and did I get the index that I want? Oh, no, wait, 2.5. I don't want a 2.5. I want an integer. All right, fix, time for fix. So I'm going to make this thing an integer of the length divided by 2. Run the thing again. And I get a 2. Is that what I want? 0, 1, 2. Yep, I got it. Okay, so now I just got to plug in this index to find my median. Median is equal to this thing with the median index. Right? And again, I'm going to test this thing to see if I'm getting what I want. Median equals median. And am I going to get the median? Yeah, I got it. Okay, but this was if it's an odd number of numbers, right? And by the way, okay, I saw that it works for 5 numbers. Well, but let me go play around with this thing, see if I get the correct answer for 3 numbers. Is it going to work for 3? Yeah, all right. I still don't trust it. I don't trust it all. Try 7 numbers. Oops, 7 numbers, right? Is it still going to find the middle one? Middle one is 51. Yeah, I still got it. All right, so it's working for odd numbers, right? But what I have to tell it here now is I'm only going to do this business if my length of numbers is, so find the index of the median if we have odd number of numbers. In other words, if my length of file as list, which is how many numbers we have, modulus 2 is not equal to 0. Remember, if it is equal to 0, then it's an odd, it's even number of numbers in the file. If it's not equal to 0, right, that's what this is. So then I'm going to grab all this stuff here and tab it under it. So it only happens if it's an odd number of numbers. It should still work the same way, right? Because I have been working with odd number of numbers, so I should check to see if I get a result. Am I getting the 34? Perfect. Okay, so we solved it for odd number of numbers. Okay, now I'm going to go and change this thing, bless you, to an even number of numbers. So if I change this to 4, I shouldn't get any of this stuff, right? I might get to see the list sorted, but it's not going to do anything inside of my if. So let's test. And okay, cool. List is sorted. So now the next step, the next piece that I have to do is I have to find the average of these 2 different things. And just like I did from before, I'm going to have, let's do an else in there. Else, right? So if it's not an even number of numbers, it's an odd number of numbers. So, all right, this is if the list has even number of numbers. Okay, length is even. Okay, so basically you can just say if this whole thing equals 0, or just else since we have an if already. Okay, so I'm going to go and grab I'm going to try to find my one median index first, right? So I'm going to try to find the median of one of them. All right, I don't know if it's the correct one. I don't know which one's that. Let's call it median index 1. I'm going to see what I'm getting, and based on this one that I'm getting, I'm going to get the other one. Right? So since I'm only working with 4 numbers, 0, 1, 2. Okay, I got this one. So if my median index, why don't I call this 2? Median index 2, because it kind of makes more sense since that's the second index. All right, so just so you visualize, if I have this thing, all right, let me put it under. So if I have this list of numbers, right, then my index is 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So I got this index. This thing is showing me a 2. All right, median index is 2. Okay, right here. It's 2. All right, so I got this one, the 2. So what do I have to do to get this one? Any ideas? Going once, going twice. How about if I just subtract 1 from this one? So I'm just going to go in there. I'm going to say, all right, well, this was my median index 2 is this one. If I just subtract 1 from it, see if I get the right thing. Median index 1 is equal to median index 2 minus 1, right? And if I run this thing, this is my 2. All right, let me copy this, throw it there. Run again. Whoops. Change this to 1. All right, so now I should be getting index 1 and 2 for this set of numbers, or whatever, for a set of 4 numbers. So I am 0, 1, and then 2. So I'm getting the 1 and the 2. Okay, so this is working for 4 numbers. Is it going to work for 6 numbers? Let's just check real quick before I move on to the next one. Just to make sure, right? 6 numbers. Am I going to get the 2 in the middle? 0, 1, 2, 3. I got the 2 and the 3, so I got these 2 in the middle. It looks like it's working, but I still don't believe it. Why don't I make it an 8? Run again. And now it's a 3 and a 4. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 3 and 4 are these. And it's still the 2 in the middle. Okay, so I found the median indexes. Now the next thing I got to do is simply go and calculate the median. So I go median is equal to, and I'm going to use this whole thing right here. This is equal to this plus, so this is the median index 1 plus median index 2, the whole thing divided by 2. Okay, and we're going to run into an issue here, but why don't we experience it for ourselves? And the issue is that again. So I can be adding strings and integers. Okay, well, let's cast some things. This is going to be an integer, right? Because that's what it is. And then the other one is also going to be an integer. Okay, all the way to here. And then the whole thing is divided by 2. And then I'm going to show you the median. Median equals, oops, print. Median equals median. Run it. And by the way, before I run it, why don't I make it easy for myself again? Let's go back to 4 numbers. See if I get the 4 numbers. All right, 49 and 53. Yeah, it's around 51 average. All right, let's check it again. Let's go with 8 numbers. And by the way, you can change these numbers too here. Instead of 0 to 100, make it from 0 to 5 or something. You know, make it easier for yourself. Run it again. You know, oh, 0, 1, 2. Oh, wow, look, the average of 1 and 2 is 1.5. Much easier to calculate. You don't have to bust out a calculator. All right, so let's go and make this 6 numbers. Make it 0 to 10 or something. Okay, 6 numbers. And the 2 in the middle are 5 and a 6. Right? The average of these two is 5.5. So it looks like it's working. Let's check it one more time. Make it an 8. Alright, is it the 2 in the middle? Yeah, still is. And at that point, I can go in there and I can say, alright, take this out. We go back to 100. And now the program's done. Okay? So, but I will leave it like this, and this is your hint for basically the whole thing solved, actually. This is P47 hint. Okay? And the one for the sunspots, I already gave you a hint on how to do that. That's all this stuff here that I did. Alright, so this is, I guess, this piece right here. So this is your hint for the sunspots. P, what number? 48? 48 hint. Okay, so you got the 48 hint, you got the 47 hint, and you also got the whatever other number you have in there. This is the 46 too. Okay, so that is your bundle of fun for this week. That's all you have to do. I pretty much gave you the answers. Try not to look at them. Try to do it on your own without copy pasting my stuff. And if you end up copy pasting my stuff, do it again without my aid and looking at the solution. And then next week we'll do a little bit more of this stuff, a little bit more complicated. And that's this, the last serious piece of assignment. And then after that, it's going to be basically just lots of extra credits. And I highly encourage you, well, actually, there's a final exam towards the end, but if you do all the extra credits, you would not have to do the final exam at all. That's my incentive for you to do the extra credits. Okay? So thanks for coming. I'll see you next time. And let me know if you have any questions.